Hello and welcome to Spinster's Library. I'm Claudia and this is my Victober 2020 TBR. I am so excited to take part in Victober for the third time this year. If you're not aware of Victober, it is, as the name suggests, a Victorian themed readathon which runs all throughout the month of October. This is being hosted by three wonderful booktubers, Kate Howell, Lucy from Lucy the Reader and Katie from Books and Things. I will link all three of their announcement videos in the description box if you want to find out more about this readathon. As I've said, this is the third time I'm taking part. In the previous 2 years, I have always taken part quite actively, meaning that as well as reading Victorian literature, I've also made a lot of Victorian literature themed videos, which are compiled in two playlists, and I'll link both of them in the description box if you fancy getting into the Victorian mood a little bit before Victober starts. So my 2018 and 2019 Victober playlist are linked in the description box. I will also link my Spotify music playlist, which I made last year. And this is a playlist of Victorian music, that is music from the Victorian era. It isn't all music from Britain, it's from all over the world. Unfortunately, Spotify is not the best platform for kind of comprehensive classical music, but I've tried my best to compile a playlist of Victorian music, incidentally all Victorian music composed by female composers, for you to listen to as you read your Victorian literature. So link to the Spotify is also in the description box. You can just click on that and maybe discover your new favourite composer. But now let's get to the TBR, to the books that I am going to be reading next month. And there is a little bit of a difficulty this year for me because I have lost my Kindle e-reader. I don't know how, because I have not left the house since March. I know exactly when I last had my Kindle because I keep track of my reading, so I know that the last time I used it was on the 4th of April. I have not been anywhere since, so there's definitely no chance of me actually losing this Kindle somewhere outside of the house. It has to be in the building, but I haven't found it yet. And that makes getting Victorian literature a little bit harder. So I expect I'm going to be listening to a few audiobooks, and I might even have to read some books on my phone or on my browser, on my laptop. But we'll get to that bridge. No, what's the saying? We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Worst case scenario is that I'm going to have to buy a few paperbacks. As always with Victober, there are several reading challenges and I'm planning to get to all of them. The Reader's Challenge, this is a new thing that the hosts of Victober have introduced this year. It's like a community challenge. The Reader's Challenge for this year is to read a book from a previous Victober TBR. And for this pick, I've chosen Silas Marner by George Eliot. This was on my 2019 TBR. I don't think it was on my 2018 TBR. I don't think I've had it for that long. But it was on my TBR last year. I didn't get to it. I think I started reading this at some point this winter. And I didn't finish it and then I put it aside and I kind of DNF'd it. But it wasn't because I wasn't enjoying the book. It was just kind of the wrong time. I wasn't in the right mindset. I wasn't in the right mood to read Silas Marner. This is George Eliot's, I think, third ever novel. It was published in 1861 and it is about a weaver who is accused of a crime. Last time I started it, I didn't get that far into it. I think I got maybe 3 or 4 chapters in, so I'm going to start this one from the beginning and I'm pretty confident I'll read it this time. Because like I said, I did enjoy it. I just didn't quite have the right frame of mind to continue with it. You know what I'm talking about. Kate Howell's challenge is to read a new-to-you book from a favourite Victorian author. And for this one, I am picking Agnes Grey by Anne Bronte. In Victober 2018, I believe, I read Anne Bronte's The Tenant of Wildfowl Hall, which has quickly become one of my favourite ever Victorian novels. I was so blown away by it. I really, really loved it. At the time, no one seemed to be talking about it on BookTube. I think quite a few people picked it up for Victober last year, so I think that it's been discussed a lot more in the past 2 years. But I haven't read her much more well-known novel, Agnes Grey. I say her much more well-known novel. She has only written those 2 novels. I'm picking Agnes Grey this time. This is probably one book that I'm going to get on audiobook So if you have a favourite edition on audiobook, a favourite narrator of Agnes Grey, I think there have been quite a few different recordings of that, then comment down below with your recommendation for an audiobook. Katie's challenge is a really interesting one as well, and that is to read a Victorian novel that corresponds to your favourite contemporary genre. I'm not much of a contemporary reader, but one of my favourite genres of 20th century fiction is dystopian novels. Actually, both of 20th century and of contemporary fiction. I like a good dystopian novel. Dystopia wasn't really a huge genre in Victorian literature, although the earliest example of dystopian fiction is, of course, Mary Shelley's The Last Man, but I have already read that one, and also it's pre-Victorian. I believe that's from the 1820s. However, I have come across a few Victorian novels that could be described as dystopian fiction. I'm not going to read any H.G. Wells. I read The War of the Worlds last year or 2 years ago. I wasn't that into it. But Margaret Oliphant wrote a novella with the title The Land of Darkness, which corresponds to modern-day dystopian fiction. It's quite a short novella, 70-80 pages or something like that, and it's apparently very different to her other fiction, since she's known more for her realist fiction. I have not read any Margaret Oliphant, but she keeps getting recommended to me, so I'm really interested to see how an author who is known for domestic fiction, for realist fiction, tackles something completely out there, like a dystopian setting. In reading descriptions of this novella, it seems like it is more of like a sort of fantasy, allegory, parable type story rather than a sort of hard science fiction, this is what the future is going to look like type story. But that's fine by me. I'm very curious about The Land of Darkness. Lucy's challenge is one where I'm going to cheat a little bit. Her challenge was to read a diary or a collection of letters. I'm going for a memoir. I'm going for The Wonderful Adventures of Mrs. Seacole in Many Lands by Mary Seacole. This is a memoir / travel log published in 1857, and it is one of the most famous and well-liked of its genre, the genre here being Victorian travel logs. Apparently it was a bestseller when it came out in 1857. It's since been forgotten a little bit, but I feel like I've seen it spoken about on BookTube since. Mary Seacole was a British-Jamaican writer who worked as a nurse during the Crimean War and also ran a hotel at some other point in her life. She seems to be very involved in the history of the Crimean War and details her experiences in this book. So those were the 4 books on my TBR that fit the 4 challenges, but I have 2 more which I'm calling optimistic add-ons. So if I manage to get through those 4 books, then I'm going to pick up those other 2 as well. The first one, and one of the only books that I actually have in paper on my TBR, is Bram Stoker's Dracula. Had this on my TBR for a while. Famous vampire novel from 1897. Possibly contender for the ugliest cover on my TBR award. I don't know what it is about the Wordsworth classics, but they always choose the most awful looking cover images. Anyway, I hope that the novel is more pleasing than this image suggests. The second novel, that's my optimistic add-on, and probably one that I'm going to have to get as an ebook and then read on my browser, is a novel called Maid, Marianne, the Forest Queen by J.H. Stocqueler? Just guessing on the pronunciation here. And this is a novel published in 1849. I was very recently very disappointed by the Henry Gilbert version of Robin Hood. I like the myth of Robin Hood, and I don't think Henry Gilbert did it justice. So when I was looking for other Robin Hood retellings, I came across this one, which is focused on Robin Hood's lady, Maid Marian, who this author describes as the Forest Queen. This could be really, really fun, or it could be really, really awful, but I'm very curious to find out. So this was my Victober TBR. I think I've been very restrained this year. I think I could totally read all 6 of these books. Some of them are really quite short, and none of them are really quite long. I'm setting myself up for success. I've also chosen not to take part in the group read-along for that reason. The group read-along being Charlotte Bronte's Shirley, simply because I want, at least once in my life, make a TBR and then stick to it completely. We'll see if that's the case. I am so excited for Victober this year. I hope you are as well. Let me know what you're reading. Let me know if you have any opinions on the books that I've picked. And stay tuned on this channel for some Victorian content. I've got a lot of ideas. As always, some of them are more silly and some of them are more serious. But it's going to be fun. Thank you for watching. Bye!